Hello everyone, just wanted to make a short video, hopefully short, on the settings that I use for my Snapmaker 2.0 Dual Extruder. Sounds like a lot of people are having issues with it, and I just wanted to share my settings because I've kind of tweaked a lot of different things and I've got it working pretty well for what I want to do with it, and hopefully through the trial and error that I went through, hopefully this will help somebody else. So I want to start by the E-steps. A lot of this stuff is going to be known things that people should be doing already anyway, and I can't take credit for a lot of the stuff in here. But for example, when I'm doing the E-steps, I'm using the teaching text calibration step-by-step tutorial on how to do it. I go through all the process there. One thing to note is that when you do run the M92 command, you end up with this line that pops out. It'll tell you what your current E-steps are, and then it also has something called backup single and backup dual, and you can see that backup dual matches the current. And so one thing that I found out that was kind of stupid is you can switch tools here, and I thought switching the tools and running the M92 would give you the E-steps for that current extruder, but it doesn't seem that way. If you make a change to the E-steps in T0, for example, and you go to T1 and you run your M92, it will actually come out with the same E-steps from T0. So they just match. So my only advice there is to kind of look at your E-steps, look at the amount of filament that actually gets extruded, and maybe split the baby. I mean, just if it's within a couple millimeters or something like that, just try to kind of nail it in between. That seemed to work for me. I'm not really having a lot of issues with the E-steps because of that. So that backup single, it looks like if you look at my E-steps that I had for my single extruder, that was what I had in there. So that's kind of the backup there, it looks like, just if you put that other module in. So then there is the flow calibration, using the same steps here, the slicer flow calibration, just printing out the box, measuring the thickness of the walls. When I did that on my single extruder, I got a flow rate of 90.91%, and I just kept both nozzles the same for the dual extruder, but it ended up coming out the same. I did the 100% flow rate and ended up with the same results as the 100% flow rate on my single extruder. So I tried the 90.91 and it worked just fine. So obviously test it out yourself, see what works with what you have. So don't just take my word for it. The next thing was the whole horizontal expansion and initial horizontal expansion. The way I did this one is I actually took this this model. There's a model on Thingiverse, their calibration rings, I think, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but a simple search would kind of show that. But this is what it looks like. Each one of these has a certain dimension on it, and these are supposed to fit inside of each other. If your horizontal expansion is not correct, especially your whole horizontal expansion, then it won't actually work. What I found is my outside measurement was exactly what it was supposed to be. I want to say that this one is like 25 maybe, millimeters. I can't remember exactly. Actually, this one is the 20 millimeter. So 20 millimeter, and it was almost dead on. So that was good after I printed it. But the hole here was actually smaller. I had to play around with the whole horizontal expansion, and I'll get to that later when I start going through the Cura settings. And then the initial horizontal expansion was just affecting the elephant's foot. So basically, the way that I had everything set up, when I messed around with that, I just kind of got rid of that elephant's foot during that process and just kind of dialed it in. So I had a starting point already with my single extruder. This just helped it kind of dial in a little bit more. But it's just multiple prints. These aren't very big. Doesn't take very long to do it. You can see a little shadow here for the prime tower. Obviously, you don't need to do that. Do the prime tower. You can just do turn off prime tower and do just the one extruder. You can try both of them. I just kept the settings the same between the two. So it did change a bit between the single extruder and the dual extruder. So do keep that in mind. That you probably want to check that before you want any kind or try to do anything with any dimensional accuracy. So then next I'll show you what I did to kind of set this up to actually make it so that the Snapmaker would actually work on Cura with the dual extruder. You can see here I've got a machine named Snapmaker 2.0 A350 Dual, because that's the machine that I have. Obviously, if you have a 250 or a 150, you can do the same thing. It's just going to be slightly different. So the way that I did that is close that out. Okay, so if I go into program files and you go into, I'm gonna start out by opening Luban, just so that you can kind of see where I got some of the information. A lot of this I had already in before I went into Luban and started searching for the information. But once you're in here, there's print settings, and we go into printing, and you can see that they have all the stuff in there. So if we go to Dual, the Dual has these two extruder definitions here. And so if I go ahead and edit that and pull that over to the other side. Okay, and then I'll bring out extruder 1 as well. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to here and go into the Ultimaker Cura ones, and within here it's under Share, Cura, Resources, and then there's two different spots here. Definitions is where your machine is going to be, and then Extruders is going to be the what they call the extruder train. So a lot of people know already, but I just kind of learned on my own with it. So if we go down to Snapmaker here, I basically took this A350, and you can see it's not very big. It doesn't have a lot of information in there, and I just took this. I just created one called A350 Dual. So this doesn't exist in the normal Cura stuff, but if you look in here, the only differences really is this machine extruder trains has a second one on there, and if you look, the naming convention on there is just Snapmaker extruder. This is what is currently in Cura. This is what I added in here. So I just put another postfix on there that says Dual, and then actually did two of them there, as you can see. I also modified the the width, the depth, and the height, because that dual extruder is massive, so it takes up a little bit of the build area. Okay, everything else I kept the same, so there's that. I'm going to move this over here because those are the old ones. Or sorry, those are the ones from Luban. So if I go back here, so I've created the machine. If I go back to resources and go to extruders, now I can look at the ones that I made. What I did here is I just started with this one that was already there, which you can see it's very small. That's what Cura has right now for us. And what I ended up doing is just copying that and creating a new one. You can see that it's pretty much the same. The only difference there is the name, and that's what's actually being called out in here. It's using the file name to determine which train to use. So just make sure that your naming convention is either the same as what I did, or just make sure that whatever you named it in here in the extruder file matches what is in here. So you can see that they're just numbered 0 and 1, and within there we just have some default information about it, and so it's nothing special. Once you save it, though, you do want to save that in administrator mode, because a lot of this won't let you do anything unless you're in administrator mode. So alright, so once that's done, once you have that, if you look at the settings that they actually had in Luban, they have a lot of default values here. A lot of these I don't think really matter at all. When I looked at the extruder 0 and extruder 1 side by side, I didn't really see much difference except for things like the number, right? So position 1 for the first one and position 0 for the second one, and like the naming is a little bit different, right? But if you start scrolling down in there, I saw some things like cooling fan number. There's a extruder cooling fan number. I did put these in at one point, and I'm not sure exactly why they're not in there, but that's really the only thing that I saw as something that might matter. These other things are just default settings, so they get overridden by Cura anyway if you make changes in there. So I don't think that there's anything else. This is all flow as well, so that's, like I said, all default. So we shouldn't have to worry too much about that. Once you actually get into into here, you can actually pick the A350 Dual here, and when you go in, you'll see it in there. You can go to machine settings. It'll give you all the information in there. The start G code, because I used because it's taking it from the Snapmaker 2 profile that's already in there. It already has all this stuff in there, and it all seems to work just fine for what I want. It does. I'm trying to remember. I think that you might have to tell it the number of extruders right away. I think it might default to 1, but I could be wrong about that. But either way, you have your two extruders here. I'll go over this end code here in just a minute, but that is pretty much it. But if you have Cura open already, you're gonna have to close it and then open it back up. Otherwise, you won't get that to show up. So I'm gonna go through the settings that I typically use now for Cura, and that I've had good luck with. So see. If we go close out some of this stuff. Okay. Go here. Okay. So let's start with layer height. So 0.16 is what I use for most of the things that I'm printing. From what I've read, because of the resolution of the z-axis, you know, 0.8 is pretty much the best resolution that we can get. 0.16 is actually pretty good. So that's just what I typically use. Initial layer height in Luban was 0.02, or sorry, 0.2, and it seemed to work in Luban okay, so I just kind of carried it over. Really haven't had an issue at all. So I may change that to 0.16 at one point, just to try to see if I can get a little bit of the bubbles out of the brim that tend to happen sometimes. It's not every time, so I don't know what's going on with that just yet. Let's see. One of the things that I found out in doing the dual extruder is what this not overridden checkbox means, or drop down means. Basically what that means is if we're in this material, in this nozzle here, we're going to use that for the wall. So if we've applied this material, so for this part of the model, then we're saying use that same filament for the wall. So that goes for everything within the rest of this tutorial, or this going through my settings, I guess. So let's see, top and bottom. Let's see. So I put 3 skin layers on there. It makes it look kind of nice, and I do sand my prints for some of the stuff. So that does provide a little bit of wiggle room for when I'm doing it. So if I do have anything kind of showing underneath, especially if I have any kind of loose infill in there, I don't start seeing that infill kind of bleeding through and being able to see that once I start sanding on it. So so I usually keep that at 3. As far as the infill, what I've heard is that 99 is better for Cura. Cura, if you put 100% in there, it does something with the slicing and makes it a longer print time, I guess. But I haven't tested that, so I don't know if there's any truth in that. But I still just put it at 99 anyway, and it doesn't seem to affect anything. The temperature is one of the big things that I've noticed in the in printing with this dual extruder. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense to me. eSun filament says right on there that the print temp is between 205 and 225, and all I know is that if I print with the second extruder at 210, which used to be my default printing temperature, it would clog up like crazy, and I didn't know what was going on, and especially on a big print, you know, with 99% infill, it would basically ruin my day. So I did find that 200 is pretty stable. I've been using that for quite a while now, and and I haven't really had any issues at all. Like I said, I don't know why it works, but it does seem to work pretty good. So the other thing is this final printing temperature. That says there it's a function of something. When you change this to 200, it tries to move that. I just moved it back to 195 just to keep it the same, and it works fine. So I figure why touch it if it doesn't work, you know, or if it's not broken. So the flow rate, like I said, when you're doing the flow rate calibrations, all of these I set to 90.91. Just so that it can it'll have the correct flow in there. And then the standby temperature is the temperature when the other extruder is not being used. Now I have that set to 195. I haven't had an issue at all, and I've even had long standby modes, like 12 hours plus, where the right extruder wasn't being used at all, and then all of a sudden it starts being used, and it's been sitting at 195 the whole time, and I haven't had an issue at all with it. So I think that's pretty good right now, pretty stable. So didn't really do anything with speed, and didn't really do anything with travel. The retraction stuff I may have touched a little bit, but it looks like it kind of defaulted back to what I had. I was just trying to get rid of any kind of stringing, and I really don't have an issue with stringing right now with the current settings that I have. Cooling, I don't think I really changed anything here either. Obviously, you know, there's going to be different things you can do on each of these materials. It's going to have different things that you can do with them, but for the most part, it's all set the same. The only thing that goes against that is when it comes to support. When using support, I like to mix the extruders for either the support material or the interface to give it some print time. So I usually have the second extruder in there at least somewhere, because as you're printing through, if you look at this one, for example, once it's done slicing, the brim for the prime tower is going to be in red. So when it starts out, it actually uses the second extruder, which is the red that I'm using. So it uses that, and it also did the skirt in red as well. And then it also switched over to the black, because it's using the black for a lot of it right there. So you can see that it's actually using both here. And so that just kind of gives it a little bit of time with each one of them. It doesn't necessarily have to be on this first layer, but it definitely helps a little bit, because you can, if you do have a problem, if it's not extruding it properly, then you can kind of catch that right away and not waste a whole bunch of filament either. So so I end up doing that, and then it's not foolproof, but it may help. So as far as the overhang angle, 60 degrees I found actually works pretty well. In this model right here, I believe this back piece right here would need a support if it was at 50, which I believe is the standard support angle. So it would have a big support coming down here, and that's just not necessary. It actually prints just fine with 60. Most of the support settings that I have in here, as far as like the interface and the let's see what else, like the support top distance, support bottom distance, and XY distance, all these different settings here, most of them came from the YouTube channel It's Mead Maids, and the video was printing Cura supports with less filament. It goes into really good detail about the interfaces, and then while we're talking about the interfaces, there was another, so you can see here it actually prints the interface in the other color there. So the main support, and then there's the interface. But so I did see another video. It was another good video by 3D Printing Nerd called Simplify 3D 4.0 PVA Support Interface Layers, Optimize Your Soluble Supports. And that video basically was saying, if we set this to the soluble supports, then we're actually using a lot less of the PVA in there, and we don't have to have like this whole area right here be printed in PVA, because PVA is expensive. You don't want to use a whole bunch of it, so you just use this little interface layer and then have this be your normal filament, which is cheaper. And when you actually go to put this in the solution, this part right here will dissolve away, and you'll have an excellent print right on this edge here, because it'll be 100% at that point. That'll be different settings. Now I haven't tried that yet. I can see that all the settings should be there in here, which, you know, that'll be good when I get to it, when I actually get some PVA and start messing around with it. And it should, once I get it dialed in, it should work pretty good. So let's see, what's the next thing? Build plate adhesion. I typically put a skirt on there. It doesn't need it in a lot of cases, especially if it's already going to be doing the prime tower brim. But I like to do that just to kind of see that I do have good separation between my prime tower and the actual model itself, because obviously you don't want them on top of each other. But and then, like I said in here, you can pick which extruder you want to use for different things. For whatever reason, it prints the skirt on both of them. I think you're able to do just one skirt if you wanted to. Like, I could probably change this to something else, you know, either a brim or a raft or whatever, and then it would just, you know, use the other extruder. But this one, I mean, it prints both colors there. I'll come back to this brim line count here, because although we're not using a brim here, we're using a brim for the prime tower, and that's actually where it comes from. So, but first, I am going to talk about about using just the prime tower in general. On any dual material print, I use a prime tower. It's a good idea because it, you know, kind of cleans it off. But the brim size is controlled up here, like I said. This is just number of rings around it, and so I actually had a print that was 40.5 hours, and right towards the end, the prime tower, I mean, it got up there, and the prime tower got knocked down. It just got completely knocked down, and so every print, or every time it came over here to purge, there would just be a line coming out, and it'd come over and attach itself to my print. So my print looked like a catfish by the time I was done with it, because it had so many whiskers coming off of it. So, but I mean, those were able to be trimmed off, but obviously that's not something that you want, especially if you get one of them to kind of lay flat in there, and then it gets embedded, and then you end up with a line that's a different color, and it just doesn't look great. So I'm gonna go back over to here, because I do want to show you the NG code that I put in here. I can't take credit for this. I saw this on a Reddit post, I think, where somebody had mentioned, oh, well, just go ahead and put in something in here with just a random number. That way it goes there to swap the extruder nozzles. So basically what happens here is when it switches nozzles, it actually moves the nozzle over to the same position that the other one was at, and it does the thing where it's pulling it up, you know, because it's got the motor in there to actually kind of pull it away from the print, but it still just sits there and warms up right over your model, and it has the potential, and I have seen it do it before, where it has some oozing come out right on top of your model. And obviously that's less than ideal. I don't know why Cura doesn't have it in there, and obviously Luban uses Cura in the background, so they're not going to have anything different. But I don't know why they don't just by default take it over to the prime tower and then do the swap there. But this little bit of G code here actually does that. So it's just taking in your prime tower position for X and Y. And I'm going to go over a little bit more so you can see the whole thing. But it just takes that into account and uses it as a variable. And so it makes it dynamic there. And it will and you have to do it on both. But when you have a switch for when it switches the nozzle, it'll come over here first, then switch it, and then it will do the priming and then come back over to your model. So it does give it an opportunity that if it does ooze, you're going to hit your prime tower, which is what you want anyway. I mean, that's basically your ooze shield right there. The prime tower size, I mean, this may have contributed to having it knocked down to having this set at 20, but I mean, obviously if you increase it, you're going to waste more filament doing it. I don't think that this is really an issue. I think if the brim is bigger, then it should stick to the build plate, even if it's pretty tall, and not get knocked down. So these are all the settings that I have in there, and that all kind of works well. So let's see. As far as printer calibration goes, I did all the normal dual extruder calibration from within the Snapmaker touchpad, and I ended up getting, you know, all the like everything worked out fine. I got the X and Y offsets to be dialed in pretty good. I think there's a little bit of tweaking that can still be done, but I don't know if there's the resolution from within what they actually have. And basically, it's just a matter of doing the M commands and the G commands to kind of dial that in a little bit more, because that is a possibility. But once I did do that, though, for some reason with Cura, it always has the nozzle sitting pretty low. Now, because it's able to be kind of bumped, because it's got the sensor on there and the nozzle can go up, so it's not going to really tear up your build plate, but I don't want it scraping across my build plate. So what I did is within the touchscreen, once you start your print, you can swipe over and you end up seeing, let me see here. You end up seeing this screen here, and you'll have left Z offset and right Z offset. All I did was I bumped it up 0.1 millimeters for both left and right, and I was able to clear the build plate, and everything worked out fine. So it's basically just adding another 0.1 millimeter offset on the Z-axis. It's not affecting the offset between the two unless they're different, but this is, I think this is just meant for kind of on the fly changing, because I have been able to do this on the fly and actually see different results. If I start getting filament not being extruded, I can actually move this up and it'll start extruding. So I know that it affects it real time, but I haven't had to touch it. Once I set it to this, it comes over the build plate just fine, but you know, yours might not do that, but I've calibrated a few times, and for some reason it does this every time, and I'm really not sure why it says left Z offset and right Z offset, but right Z offset still has it say left Z offset up there. But anyway, so there's that. As far as mods to my actual printer, I have the A350. I have the enclosure. What I actually have for the filament holder is this A250 filament clamp version 4 from Thingiverse. This is obviously upside down, but basically this goes on the corner of the extruded aluminum piece up there, and it gets clamped down with a T-nut. and you can see that it has this little angle here, and basically your default spool holder fits in this slot right here, and will come out from there. Like I said, this is upside down, so you have to think about this flipped over. But once that is there, this is what I've been using with my single extruder for a long time. So it comes out this way, and the spool will be spinning like this, and it just misses it because of this angle here. So what I did was I attached the second one for the that came with the dual extruder. I didn't use the new spool holder piece. I don't know what you call it, but that other piece that's there, I didn't use that one. That one won't fit on here because it has another little piece that comes over this way. So this either would need to be redesigned for that, or just use your old one if you're planning on doing this. But I think that this model, if it hasn't been redesigned already, might need to be redesigned to have another angle on here, because right now I have the other spool over here, and it just barely misses this, and I usually use that for my second extruder. It's not running all the time, so it's just barely kind of moving on it. So, but either way, that's one of the things that I use and that I plan on changing in the future. I also use this this spool guide here. This takes bearings that go on here. This part right here goes on the normal spool holder that the machine comes with. And once you put that on there, you actually use two of these, and you use two bearings per each one of these, and you have two of them, obviously. So you have to print two of these, and then two of the cap pieces, and then you have to have 4 bearings, and that's per side. So you have 2 of these, and basically this sits on that rod, and the filament kind of sits on top of those bearings, and it makes it super smooth for feeding that filament out. So anyway, this is a good thing, and this is also on Thingiverse. I don't know exactly you might be able to just search for that, but and then the cap for it just clips over the top. And if your hole expansion is not set properly, it might be a really tight fit for it, but you'll understand it. You'll get it. I just printed out a couple more once I got the dual extruder and put them on the other side, and I mean it works awesome. So I think I got 10 of those bearings in a kit from Amazon, and so it's not too super expensive. I think it's well worth the money. So and then I think that's pretty much it. I can't think of anything else that that might be helpful, but my prints are coming out pretty good now. Like I said, I had whiskers last night on this whole thing, and that wasn't that cool, but the print that I'm doing right now looks great, looks phenomenal. I haven't had any issues like some people have had with layer shifts or anything like that. The only other thing that I had an issue with was the like in my previous video was the hold on a second. Where are you? Oh, here it is. Was the wedge, or was having to put a wedge in for the extruder. They called it a buckler or buckle idler, or no, a buckle for the idler, and basically it just kind of snaps on, and for some reason they said it was tolerance issues. For some reason it would pop out, and they found it like a week before I had posted my video apparently. But I just made this small little thing. I have it on Thingiverse right now, and you know, it just wedges in there and makes it so it can't pop out. That and the lower printing temperature has meant that it works great. So I have 2 of those in there, one on each one, even though I wasn't having a problem with the other one. So that's all I have. If anybody has any questions, just leave comments in the or leave a comment, and I will try to answer anything that you guys have questions about. But I hope it helps. And if you have any suggestions for me, that would be great too, because this is a community, and when you have the forums go down for pretty much a week, that's not very helpful, especially when these extruders just came out, and we need this community to be able to figure out these issues. So anyway, enjoy.